I set my handbag down on the floor, hadn't even taken off my heels when I saw my husband, Ethan, sitting cross-legged on the sofa, smirking like he'd just won a chess match. "You're back, Hazel." The way he said my name, smooth, light, sent a chill down my spine. "Yeah. What's with the smug look?" I asked, eyes locked on his arms crossed casually over his chest. Ethan shrugged, swirling a glass of bourbon like he was starring in the final scene of a movie he directed. "Oh, nothing. I just made a big move. A breakthrough. Really?" "What kind of breakthrough?" He stood up, stepping closer like he wanted me to see just how proud of himself he was. "Your jewelry collection, I sold all of it." My heart clenched. I thought I misheard. "You? What did you just say?" My voice was low, tight, but every word was sharp. Ethan laughed, like I'd asked the dumbest question on earth. "I said I sold your jewelry. Rings, bracelets, necklaces, all of it. You should thank me. It was just sitting there collecting dust. Now it's actually doing something. It's funding the company." I froze. That collection wasn't just jewelry. Every piece held a piece of my life. My mother's necklace she gave me before she passed, the pearl earrings I bought with my first paycheck, the sapphire ring my grandmother wore for over 40 years, and now Ethan said he was putting it to use. You had no right. I clenched my fists, feeling the sting shoot from my palms to my shoulders. "Oh, don't be dramatic. It's family property, Hazel. I'm investing in our future. Trust me. When the company takes off, you'll be proud you were part of it." "Proud?" I almost laughed, but my throat tightened. "Ethan, that was my personal property. You don't have a single signature from me allowing that. What you did is theft." His smile wavered for a second, then came back, forced. "You're being too harsh. You barely wore half of it anyway." "That doesn't give you the right to sell it like it meant nothing." I looked straight into his eyes, and for the first time, I didn't see arrogance or indifference. I saw caution. Ethan turned away, voice still trying to sound calm. "I did it for both of us. One day you'll understand." I stood frozen in the living room, feet glued to the hardwood floor. The walls, the paintings, the vintage clock, they were all still there, but I wasn't. It wasn't about the diamonds, the white gold, or the emeralds being gone. It was the man I once loved. The man I believed I was building a life with, betraying me so casually. And what scared me most was the look in his eyes, like he truly believed he'd never face any consequences. I walked into the bedroom and gently closed the door behind me. The room was dark, lit only by the faint glow of a desk lamp casting soft light against the olive-colored wall. Ethan was still downstairs. I could hear the fridge open, the clink of ice in a glass. He was calm enough to pour himself a scotch. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling as I pulled open the nightstand drawer. The mahogany jewelry box that had always been there now sat empty. Only a few old hair clips and a tarnished silver pendant remained. No sapphire ring from my grandmother, no pearl necklace my mother left behind. None of the pieces I had carried with me through the years, like fragments of memory. I took a deep breath. Rage surged like a rising tide, but I didn't let it spill over. I knew Ethan. He was skilled at flipping the script, manipulating others to make himself look innocent. If I let my emotions take over, I'd lose. I opened the bottom drawer, where I kept something no one else in the house knew about. An old phone, no SIM card, no social apps, just one single app installed, Tag Trace. After a string of burglaries in the north side of our neighborhood earlier this year, I had quietly installed tracking chips in 6 of my most valuable jewelry pieces, the ones I could never afford to lose. Each chip was no bigger than a pinhead, discreetly embedded in clasps or lock mechanisms. Ethan had never noticed, and I never mentioned it. The screen lit up. A map appeared with 6 red dots. I tapped through each one. One was currently at a store called Regal Estate Jewelry in downtown Seattle. Another, the white gold bracelet with diamonds, was showing up at an address in the city's industrial district. I zoomed in on the map, reading every street name, address, and last updated timestamp. My heart pounded, not with panic, but because I had something Ethan never anticipated: proof. I took screenshots of everything, backed up the data to a portable drive, and tucked it away. Then I sent a copy to a hidden email account, just in case. I also uploaded it to a private cloud account under an alias only I knew. About 10 minutes later, I heard Ethan's footsteps coming up the stairs. I quickly put the phone back in the drawer, closed it, and sat calmly, as if I'd just been reading. The door opened. "Are you asleep?" he asked, his tone so nonchalant it made my skin crawl. "Couldn't sleep," I replied, eyes on a book I hadn't read more than 2 pages of. "I know you're still upset, but you'll see. Once things fall into place, you'll realize I made the right call." I nodded slightly, not engaging. Silence was my best armor now. Athan watched me for a moment, then closed the door and returned to his office. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there listening to the sound of his fingers tapping on the keyboard in the next room. Maybe he was drafting plans to scale his company, or maybe he was already cleaning up the mess. Ethan always had backup plays tucked away. But this time, he underestimated me. I wasn't just hurt, I was awake. The next morning, while Ethan was still in the shower, I quietly packed a few personal essentials, grabbed the hard drive, and left the house. Driving downtown, I called Elise, my closest friend, who worked at a major insurance firm in the city. "Elise, I need a favor, and it's legal." I heard her chair creak, followed by her steady voice. "Basil, go ahead. I'm listening." Elise met me at a small coffee shop on the corner of Pine and 8th Avenue, right across from the Seattle Police Department. I arrived 10 minutes early and sat at the farthest table, back to the window. Even though I had prepared thoroughly, my nerves were anything but calm. A few minutes later, Elise walked in, hair neatly tied back, carrying her laptop bag, dressed in a beige coat as polished as always. She said nothing, just gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze as she sat down. "Did you bring everything?" I nodded. I pulled a hard drive, an old phone, and a plastic folder filled with documents out of my purse. "This is the evidence. Locations of each jewelry item, a full list, estimated values, and the last time I tracked them." Elise flipped through a few pages and nodded, visibly impressed. "You're working like a forensic investigator, Hazel. Had you been planning this all along?" I smiled faintly. "Not really. But after the break-in at the neighbor's house last February, I didn't feel safe. I installed stealth tracking chips in each valuable piece. They don't transmit unless the app is open. Ethan never knew." She looked at me, her expression turning serious. "Are you sure you want to go this far? Going to the police could turn this into a criminal investigation." "Elise, he took everything that was personally mine and used it for his investments without my consent. That's not just betrayal. That's a crime. And I'm not letting it get brushed off as some marital misunderstanding." Elise didn't say another word. She simply handed me a business card. "This is Lieutenant Danielle Rhodes, Private Property Crimes Division. I worked with her on an insurance fraud case. Straightforward, sharp, and not afraid of powerful names." An hour later, I was seated in an interview room on the 3rd floor of SPD, Elise beside me. Lieutenant Rhodes walked in. Early 40s, compact frame, bobbed brown hair, and sharp eyes that didn't feel cold. "Miss Hazel Myers? I'm Lieutenant Rhodes. Elise told me you have information to report." I handed her the folder and the hard drive. "I suspect my husband, Ethan Myers, sold my personal jewelry collection without permission, without power of attorney, and without documentation. I also have GPS data." She plugged the drive into her laptop, scanning through the tracking map and item list. 6 confirmed locations, 2 at stores, 4 in transit. This is very solid evidence, Hazel. Do you have photos of the items before they were taken?" I nodded and opened my phone gallery. Me wearing the sapphire ring at my sister's wedding, my mom in the pearl necklace on Christmas 2009, and the gold pendant engraved with HM I'd posted to Instagram last year. "Perfect," Rhodes said, eyes still on the screen. "I'll file an official report. Are you prepared to sign a property loss statement and press charges?" I inhaled deeply. "I am." 15 minutes later, I signed the complaint. My hand trembled slightly, but I'd never been more certain. Lieutenant Rhodes stood and extended her hand. We'll begin verifying item locations, contact the stores, and issue requests for financial monitoring on your husband's accounts. This may expand into a larger investigation, but your proactive report and detailed evidence are key. I nodded, my voice even. I'm not doing this out of anger. I'm doing it because I need to reclaim what's mine. She gave a slight smile. That's the best reason there is. And I believe you know exactly what you're doing. That night, I sat in my car, watching the city lights blur through the windshield. A part of my life had just officially entered the case files of a criminal investigation. 3 days after my meeting at the police station, I got a call from Lieutenant Rhodes while tidying up at the interior design studio where I worked part-time. Miss Myers, we've just confirmed 3 of the jewelry pieces on your list. 2 are currently being held at Highline Jewelers on Mercer Street. The other one showed up in the inventory report of a private auction house called Westmont Estate Auctions. I froze. You mean they still have them? Most likely. More importantly, these businesses are cooperating with the investigation. However, something more serious has come up. I tightened my grip on the phone, my voice low. I'm listening. While reviewing the financial transactions tied to the jewelry sales, we expanded the inquiry into your husband's business accounts. Ethan Myers. We found a series of untraceable transfers over the past 3 months to an investment fund called Clover Cascade. Clover Cascade, I'd never heard of it. Who runs that fund? I asked, the feeling of dread tightening in my chest. According on paper, it's registered under a shell entity in Delaware, a common cover. But after cross-checking federal tax IDs, we discovered the actual executive director is Ethan. I went still. Is created a separate fund under a fake company? Exactly. And here's the issue. Those transfers were never reported to the IRS. Some came from his company's accounts. Others from the sale of your personal jewelry? My nails dug into the edge of the desk. So this is money laundering or tax evasion. We can't make a final determination yet, but it's clearly a serious financial violation. IRS specialists have now joined the case. If confirmed, he could face federal charges for tax fraud and embezzlement. I felt a weight press against my chest. For years, Ethan had crafted a persona of vision and charisma. Polished, admired at startup conferences, preaching like he was shaping the next generation of entrepreneurs. Behind the scenes, stolen assets, invisible numbers, unanswered questions. Do I risk being implicated? I asked, though I already knew what I hoped she'd say. Given that you came forward voluntarily, provided documentation, and maintained independent finances, we do not consider you a co-conspirator. Still, I'll need you to stay in close contact and do not share this with anyone, especially your husband. Understood. After I hung up, I sat motionless at my desk, like someone who had just awakened from a long, numbing trance. I'd always known Ethan was ambitious, but I never thought he'd be reckless enough to use my private money as camouflage for dirty financial activity. That night, Ethan came home late. He tossed his keys on the counter, still wearing his button-down shirt under a dark coat. I was sitting at the kitchen island, not bothering to turn around. Home early today, he said. I kept my tone neutral. Just enough work. You still haven't forgiven me, have you? Forgiveness has nothing to do with needing the truth. He paused. The air between us stretched tight. Hazel, don't blow this up. I know you're angry, but I needed that money to keep the company alive. You benefit too, don't you? I turned to face him, looking him straight in the eye. Benefit from what? A title, paperless equity, or the legal responsibility when everything crashes? He scowled, growing impatient. What are you even talking about? I stayed silent. I wasn't foolish enough to tell him the police were already tracking every transaction linked to that phantom fund. He had no idea I had backed up all the data in 3 separate locations, one of which was under Elise's legal account. I stood, picked up my glass of water, and walked past him. Ethan, you have a lot to explain. but I'm not interested in your explanations anymore. I want the truth and justice. I didn't look back, but I heard the glass hit the table, not hard, but just enough to know he finally realized he wasn't the only one in control of the game anymore. The next evening, when Ethan stepped through the door, I was already waiting in the living room. Only one dim light was on, just enough to clearly see each other's faces. On the table in front of me were printed documents, a few screenshot photos, and a gray envelope stamped from my attorney's office. He paused in the doorway, squinting at the pile of papers. The air in the room was thick with confrontation. "What's going on?" Ethan asked, still trying to sound composed. I pointed to the chair across from me. "Sit down. We're going to have a final, honest conversation." He stared at me for a moment, then sat, arms crossed. "I'm listening." I pulled out the first photo, a screenshot from the tracking app showing the sapphire ring's location at Westmont Auction. "This is the first item you sold. May 12th, you signed the delivery slip, the store confirmed. This is your signature." Ethan gave a dry laugh, but there was tension in his eyes. "You tracked your own jewelry? Are you always this paranoid?" I wasn't paranoid, I was cautious, and thankfully I was right not to trust you. I laid down a financial statement. 3 transfers from Ethan's business account to the Clover Cascade Fund. This is company money, but one of those transactions matches exactly what Highline Jewelers sent after selling my mother's pearl necklace. Do you know what that means? Ethan leaned forward, forcing a crooked smile. "You're trying to paint me like a criminal. This is all a misunderstanding. The company needed liquidity, and I thought I wouldn't notice. Or that I'd let it slide again, like every other time." I cut him off, voice low and razor sharp. "Ethan, you crossed the line. This isn't the first time you used me like a bottomless bank, but this time, you touched something that was never yours." He slammed his hand on the table. "You're destroying everything we've built. What, you're going to take this to court? Drag it out in public? Who do you think will believe you?" "I don't need anyone to believe me," I said without blinking. "I have evidence. The police are investigating, so is the IRS. And my attorney already filed for a temporary freeze on your assets." Ethan's face drained of color. He stood, grabbed the stack of papers, flipped through a few pages, then threw them back down on the table. "You can't do this." "I can, and I am." I stood, now face to face with him, so close I could see the sweat beginning to form at his temple. "Ethan, I've been silent for too long. I let you manipulate my emotions, control my finances, blur the lines between right and wrong with empty promises. But I'm no longer the woman who thinks love means unconditional forgiveness." My voice hardened, each word clean and deliberate. "I won't let you wreck my life, not for another second." Ethan looked like he wanted to speak, but nothing came out. For the first time, there was no smug comeback, no rehearsed defense. We stood there, in the dim room, surrounded by the remains of a marriage that had rotted at its core. When he walked out the front door, the air in the house suddenly felt lighter. I stood alone, staring at the remaining papers on the table. No more tears, no more shaking, just a quiet, absolute clarity. On Monday morning, I walked into attorney Rachel McKinley's office on the 18th floor of the Paramount Tower, holding a thick folder tightly in my hands and carrying a resolve that couldn't be shaken. Rachel, sharp, composed, and nearing 50, had been recommended by Elise as one of the top divorce and asset protection lawyers in King County. She invited me to sit, poured a cup of hot tea, and spoke gently. "Hazel, I've reviewed the file Elise sent over. You've prepared everything thoroughly. Now I need you to walk me through it all from the beginning with nothing left out." It took me nearly 40 minutes to explain everything, from Ethan selling my jewelry without consent to the police investigation into financial transactions tied to the anonymous investment fund he ran. I handed over screenshots, tracking data, bank records, and a copy of my report with Lieutenant Rhodes. Rachel listened without interruption, nodding occasionally to take notes. When I finished, she leaned back slightly, fingers interlaced. "You did the right thing going to the police first. That establishes you're not complicit. As for us, There are two immediate actions. We'll file for a no-fault divorce and petition the court for a temporary freeze on all personal and business assets under Ethan's name. But if he already moved some of them, I asked, unable to hide the worry in my voice. If the transfer occurred after the filing, it's considered an intentional attempt to hide assets. Not only is it invalid, it strengthens the case against him. Rachel opened her laptop and began filling out the forms. Are you ready to sign the petition today? I didn't hesitate. And absolutely, I signed the divorce petition, blue ink on white paper like a clean slice dividing the past from what lay ahead. 4 days later, Ethan was formally served. I wasn't present, but Rachel forwarded me the scanned acknowledgement. Ethan Myers, named respondent in the divorce case, and now also a subject of investigation in case file 4587F at the King County Superior Court. That night, he called. I expected it. I didn't pick up. A message came shortly after. You really think you're gonna win this? I'm not going down quietly. I deleted it without replying. 3 days later, Lieutenant Rhodes called back. Hazel, I wanted to inform you officially. The prosecutor's office has approved charges against Ethan Myers, unauthorized appropriation of personal property, corporate financial fraud, and federal tax evasion under Section 7201. I sat silently for a few seconds before asking, will I have to testify? Most likely, but based on the evidence you've provided, your role is clear. You're a victim defending your rightful assets. There's no legal liability on your part. Thank you, Lieutenant. Before hanging up, she added something I won't forget. Hazel, you've done something not everyone has the courage to do. That evening, I opened a file Rachel had emailed me. It included a sworn statement of my separate property, complete with the list of jewelry currently being recovered. I signed each page with a strange calm. When I reached the line labeled Authorized Custodian of Disputed Assets, I wrote my name in steady, unshaken handwriting. The house no longer echoed with Ethan's footsteps. No more sweet-sounding half-truths masking control. Instead, there was only the rustle of paperwork, the steady tick of the wall clock, and a new feeling I hadn't known in a long time: freedom. Even with the case still pending, it was real freedom. 2 weeks after Ethan was indicted, I got a call from Lieutenant Rhodes while browsing the organic grocery store near my house. Her voice came through clearly over the quiet shelves around me. Hazel, I've got good news. We've recovered 5 out of the 6 jewelry pieces, including the pearl necklace and the sapphire ring. Westmont Auction surrendered them in perfect condition. I gripped the cart handle tighter, speechless for a moment. What about the last one? It's being held as federal evidence, but if the case concludes favorably, it'll be returned to you as well. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Thank you, Lieutenant. And Hazel, she hesitated. Not many people manage to turn things around the way you have. You should be proud of yourself. I smiled faintly, feeling like I could finally take a deep breath for the first time in months. That afternoon, I stopped by Rachel's office. On her desk was a tidy document box labeled Personal Property, Hazel Myers. All of it has been legally recognized as separate property, she said, flipping through court confirmations and store receipts. We've filed to secure full ownership. From this point on, no one can contest it. I looked down at the jewelry in the glass box. The sapphire ring, the engraved gold pendant, and the diamond earrings my mother wore every Thanksgiving. They still sparkled, but what I felt wasn't about the carat value. It was the quiet triumph of reclaiming something I once thought was lost for good. After the meeting, I went straight to the bank and rented a private safe deposit box. No spouse on file, no shared access. I placed everything inside, closed it, and signed my name with the firmest stroke of my life. For years, I had lived in a gray area between what's ours and what's no longer mine. Not anymore. When Ethan appeared for his first court hearing, I didn't go. Rachel represented me. She reported back that Ethan looked worn out, stripped of the polish he used to wear like armor. The media had started to notice too, especially since his company had once made a local 40 under 40 list. I didn't feel vindicated, but I felt lighter. 4 days later, I made my first wire transfer toward a new chapter, my own designed studio in Fremont, a space I'd dreamed of for years, something that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. Elise was the first to visit the studio. She walked in, glanced around at sketches pinned across the walls, and asked, "What are you calling this place?" I thought for a moment, then replied, "It's Has Studio, it's my initials, but also short for healed and zeroed. Healed and starting from zero." Elise laughed. "Sounds like a personal revolution." I smiled. "Exactly. A coup d'etat for my life." That night, as I packed the last boxes from the house Ethan and I once shared, I found a folded slip of paper deep in the nightstand drawer. A wire receipt from Ethan to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, dated 8 months ago. I wasn't surprised. I simply took a photo and sent it to Rachel. This wasn't over, but that was okay. I was ready. I walked out the front door and locked it one final time. No weight in my chest, no looking back. As the moving truck rolled toward Fremont, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The house slowly disappeared behind the trees, and I, at last, was driving toward a life of my own. 3 months after I'd moved to Fremont, I received an email from Rachel with a simple subject line, "Finalized." I opened the attachment. It was the official divorce decree, stamped in red by the King County Superior Court, the judge's signature in the bottom corner. Just 5 words. Marriage officially dissolved. Final. I sat still for a long moment in the Haas studio office, morning light pouring through the tall window behind me. Outside, Fremont was calm like a painting, but inside me, a chapter had closed completely. No more temporary, no more pending, no more gray area for Ethan to slip into. I printed the decree and quietly pinned it on the wooden board next to my desk, between color palettes and new project sketches. Not as a reminder of pain, but as a marker. From today, I write the next chapter of my life. That same day, Rachel called. "Hazel, I just got confirmation from the prosecutor's office. Ethan has been formally charged with 3 counts: embezzlement, money laundering, and federal tax evasion. His preliminary hearing is scheduled for the end of the quarter." I asked no questions. Justice, to me, was no longer about revenge. It was a boundary clear and firm between right and wrong, something I needed to ensure I'd never go back. That evening, I opened a bottle of white wine and played the music I used to love in college. Not the kind Ethan had once called too melancholic, but the kind that reminded me of who I was before I lived under the illusion of partnership that was actually control. Elise showed up 10 minutes late with pizza, 2 coconut gelatos, and a hug that said more than words. "Freedom taste good?" she asked, biting into a slice. I laughed. "It's not a new flavor, just mine, finally undiluted." She glanced around the studio, running her fingers along a design pinned to the wall. "Age is off to a solid start. Any new contracts?" "I'm signing a boutique renovation in Capitol Hill next week. They found me through a post I shared about everything that happened. Turns out being honest is its own kind of opportunity." Elise chuckled. "Could be the start of a side career as a motivational speaker." I shrugged. "If it helps someone avoid getting burned the way I did, it's worth it." After she left, I stepped out onto the balcony, where I'd recently planted lavender, mint, and a small rosemary bush. I knelt to tend to the leaves, gently watering the roots. There's something addictively grounding about caring for something and watching it grow by your own hands. A week later, I received a handwritten letter. No sender, no return address. But I knew the handwriting. "Hazel, I won't deny I did wrong, but I never thought you'd go this far. I've lost everything, my reputation, my money, my friends. And maybe more than all of that, I lost you. Whatever happens, I hope you find peace." Yeah. I folded the letter and placed it in the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet, the one reserved for things that no longer belonged to my future. I didn't feel angry, but I didn't feel regret either. A few days later, while guiding a team through the installation of a custom wood wall for a new project, one of the junior assistants turned to me and said, Miss Hazel, the way you handled everything, it's honestly inspiring. A smile, it's saying nothing. Because I knew I had walked through fire, and I was still standing, free, clear, and ready for whatever comes next. Hazel's story reminds us that sometimes the one who hurts us most is the very person who once shared our bed. But even in the face of betrayal, deceit, or loss, anyone can reclaim control of their life if they have the courage to stand up and act. Hazel didn't just recover her assets, she reclaimed her voice, her freedom, and her self-worth. In real life, healing doesn't come from revenge, but from choosing to move forward on your own terms. What do you think about Hazel's decision and how she took her freedom back? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful and heartfelt stories about life and family.